Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. ICRC presents a new way to help families and communities cope with and manage the challenges of caregiving with a form of audio respite. The Inland Caregivers Corner podcast is made to provide insight on caregiving, stories of encouragement, and tips on self-care. This information is coming from employees of ICRC, those who assist seniors, and members of the community. Welcome to episode 9 of the Inland Caregivers Corner. Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed our previous episode where we spoke with Carmen Estrada, the Executive Director of ICRC. It's an awesome interview. Give it a listen to gain some insight on the changes ICRC has gone through, Carmen's experience as a caregiver, and some tips on how Carmen and myself combat stress. This episode can be found on ICRC's YouTube page. Just search Inland Caregiver Resource Center on YouTube. I'm your host, Eric Chacon, a care coordinator with ICRC. And we have reached episode 9 of the Inland Caregivers Corner podcast. I'm very proud of that. A big thank you to those listening each month. Before we get going on this month's podcast, we want to recognize World AIDS Day on Wednesday, December 1st, 2021. Here at the podcast, we want to bring awareness to those fighting against HIV, those showing support for people living with HIV, and also commemorate those who have died from an AIDS-related illness. Please check out worldaidsday.org for further information. On this episode, we have licensed marriage and family therapist Lauren St. Jacques. Lauren has worked in the mental health field for over 10 years and began her career as a volunteer for the Riverside Area Rape Crisis Center. While volunteering, she found a passion for working with survivors of trauma. Lauren completed her undergrad at the University of California, Riverside, and completed her master's degree at Argosy University. She received her license as a marriage and family therapist in October of 2019 and has been in private practice for 5 years. For the last 2 of those 5 years, she has opened her own private practice. Lauren is married and has 3 stepsons who are all grown up, and also one very spoiled fur baby who makes an appearance on this podcast as well. Lauren has also assisted employees with ICRC on understanding the benefits of self-care. I found her insight was extremely helpful. On episode 9, we're going to talk to Lauren about the holidays and ways to combat the holiday blues. I'm very grateful to have her on the show, so please welcome to Inland Caregivers Corner, Lauren St. Jacques. Check it out. Thank you so much for being on the show. How's everything going?
Everything is great. I'm so excited to be here. I've never done this before, so I think this is really exciting and super fun. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. It's my pleasure. And so one of the things that brought you to my attention to have on the show was we were previously working in a self-care group that you had headed at ICRC, and I found it really helpful. And so I did want to say thank you for that. Hopefully it returns and we're able to continue that program again.
Yes. Yeah, self-care. I think I'm very passionate about self-care. So that was really an exciting thing for me to be able to do, because self-care, especially in this field, psychology, counseling, helping, you can't get enough of self-care. That's how we survive, I think. So it's really important to me.
Definitely. And in hearing that, I think I'm like, considering I've just started this career. I've only been in about 2 years, so I'm still a youngin', but I need to continue to remember that because it's easy to say, like, and I'm speaking for myself, it's easy to say, oh yeah, I'm a purveyor of self-care, but like you don't do anything for yourself.
Right.
Like,
right.
Or you do like one little thing and you're like, making sure everybody else gets self-care before you do.
Yeah. And I think too, we forget that self-care is, I think generally speaking, when we think of self-care, it's, oh, I'm going to go, get a massage, or I'm going to go shopping, or something very superficial. But oftentimes self-care is something that we don't even really enjoy doing, because taking care of ourselves, really digging deep and figuring out what's going on, and why am I feeling this way, and really processing things. That's self-care. And I think we forget to go deeper than we typically do. So
Yes, I absolutely love that you said that with such passion. Well, if you haven't heard yet, speaking to those listening, if you haven't heard my interview with our executive director, Carmen Estrada, she explains this really well also, that self-care is digging in and pulling apart those layers of whether it's trauma, pain, exhaustion, whatever that is, to see what it is that's causing that. Um, I did not think of that as a type of self-care, and that completely flipped the script for me. So to hear that from you as well is awesome, and also
yeah,
a great plug for the episode before
yeah,
this. Definitely
definitely.
go listen to it, because that is a type of self-care. So that hammers it for those thinking like, well, is it? No, it definitely is. I mean, you're hearing it twice. So
Yes.
and also with December, holiday blues is also a very real thing. With that, that was one thing we want to get into on this episode. But first off, I want to know. I guess you gained interest in wanting to help people at the Riverside Area Rape Crisis Center with
Right.
volunteering in your undergrad. Um, how did that get started? How did that come up that
Yeah.
you decided to
So
volunteer?
so this is the part of my story of where I am in my life today that I get very emotional about. So sorry if I do get emotional, but I just have so much passion about the work that I do. So um, I originally wanted to be a teacher. That was my plan growing up in elementary school, middle school, high school. That's just what I wanted to do. Um, and then I started my education career at RCC, Riverside Community College. And one of the required classes for your associate's degree is an intro to psych class. And I took that and I was like, what? What is this information? I just absolutely fell in love with it. And um, I was like, okay, I'm signing up. I actually ended up spending 3 years at RCC instead of the typical 2, because I took every psychology class RCC had to offer. So I finished up there, and then I went to UCR, and I decided I'll just get my undergrad in psychology. So when I was there, that's when I was introduced to the Riverside Area Rape Crisis Center. And I actually knew the executive director at the time. And so she said, if this is the field that you're planning to get into, why not come volunteer just to kind of get your foot in the door? So I was like, yeah, sure, I'll give it a try. Like, I never really had thought about it. So in 2005, I went through the volunteer training, and that's where I decided this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I just that population, working with trauma, working with people who have been hurt in probably the most horrific way, and then to be able to watch them and grow with them and to watch the healing process, that that was life changing for me. So I volunteered there for 5 years, and then I decided well, then they hired me on as staff, actually. So then I started training people to be able to work with survivors. And then at that point I decided, you know what, I'm just going to get my master's degree. I thought I was done after I got my bachelor's, and I just was done with school. So 2 years later, I was like, you know what? No, get your master's degree and do something with this. So I quit the Rape Crisis Center, went and got my master's. And then I just, now I have a master's in counseling psychology and have my own private practice. And I specialize in trauma. I specialize in sexual assault and sexual abuse, but I deal with a lot of grief, a lot of loss, a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression. All of that is centered around trauma. So
Wow, that's amazing to, find a passion and just move full force with it. I mean, that's always inspiring to anybody, if whatever the passion may be. Um, when when you hear someone speak on it and you feel it, that's an amazing feeling, and it gets you pumped on whatever it is that you're into at that time. Um, with community college and taking all the psychology classes, it made me think of like when you take your first psychology class, because I have my bachelor's in psychology, and I don't know if this is just me, but like everything you hear, you like want to start self-diagnosing, and you're like, oh crap, like I have that, you know?
Yes, yes.
And you're like,
I did fall into that, yes.
yeah. And it opens up this huge door of like, wow, you know, people are made up of things they experience, you know.
Mhm.
Things they experience definitely can build the person that you become, whether that's through like your parents or adult figures, things like that. Like it's really wild when you open that box and begin to look through all the different things. So
Yes.
yeah. With and it made me think too. So this was the executive director of the Riverside Area Rape Crisis Center, and they were like, "Why don't you just volunteer?" To me, it
Yeah.
seemed like, "Geez, like you're just gonna throw me right into this insane traumatic experience."
Yeah.
Um,
Well, like I said, I knew her. We had actually gone to the same church. And so she knew what I was going to school for. And I don't know if she just thought I would be good at it, if she knew I would love it. But she asked, and I was like, you know what? Sure, let's give it a shot. I'm a firm believer in you need to have experience in the field, whatever it is you're going to do, before you actually get the degree and do it. I've heard way too many horror stories of people going through their college experience and just having all the book smarts, but no actual experience. And then they graduate and then they start working in the field and they're like, what did I do? So,
yeah,
so I found that I thought it was just it was a huge blessing. And I am so grateful that I did that.
definitely. And that's one of those things where like if it terrifies you, you should probably do it, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
So awesome that that you did that, and then just it sounds like um, just fell into it and enjoyed, like you said, the healing process. Which how can you not? I mean, if you're in this field, you definitely want to help out community, and and talking with those who have experienced a trauma like a survivors who have experienced a trauma like that, um, to see them heal, man, that's got to be amazing and so fulfilling.
Oh,
um,
it's the most rewarding thing I've ever experienced. I mean, I get a lot of people will have asked me in the past, um, how do you do that? Like, how do you hear these horrible, horrible stories? And that's not the focus. That's not my focus. It's not the story. It's the healing that you witness. It's the going from seeing the person right after they've been assaulted in the hospital, going through the police I call it an interrogation. That's what it kind of feels like. But
yeah,
the interview, the exam that they have to go through, and I'm right there next to them, and going from that seeing them feel so broken to watching them over, sometimes it was years that I would work with somebody, and to watch them go from that to just to thriving and being their best version of themselves. It's just an amazing experience.
yeah, definitely. Definitely. So in that process, you started to get a master's, and then was it was it the next jump to be a marriage family therapist, or did you see yourself in that role early on?
Yeah, I knew that I always eventually wanted to have my own private practice and work for myself, set my own schedule, all of those cool things.
Yeah,
With that comes a lot of uncool things as well, but we don't have to go
of
there.
course, of
um,
course.
but yeah, I always wanted to be in private practice. And so I just felt like naturally just things kind of progressed to that. I did a lot of my internship hours, my practicum hours at the agency, the Rape Crisis Center. And then I was being supervised by somebody who was in private practice. So I kind of got my foot in the door that way. And so I just eventually transitioned over to working under her in her private practice. And then once I got licensed, just naturally transitioned into my own. Um, I don't know why I have been I knock on wood every day. and thank God as well, because I just don't know how this has been such an easy, smooth transition for me. And but I knew this is the direction I wanted to go, and here I am.
Yeah, no, and it's great. I'm glad you're where you are supposed to be, and that's what I was going to say is you're always at where you're supposed to be, and
Exactly.
it was lined up for you. And I think there was maybe some speaking that into existence for you also,
Yeah.
to where you're able to get that private practice and work for yourself. And I mean, that's amazing. Not a lot of people get to say that, so
Right. Right.
very cool. Well, it's December, and holidays already started
Yes.
after Halloween, which was insane to me because I feel like October flew by. So October flew by. Now all of a sudden it's November. It's Thanksgiving. Everybody does their thing. Now we're in December. Are you excited for the holidays? Do you enjoy the holidays, or like not so much?
Yeah, I am excited. I love this time of year. I love just the meaning behind a lot of the holidays that we celebrate. I love that this is the time where a lot of people get together with their families. I know I do. We have big family get-togethers. The food around this time is amazing.
Yes, that's where I'm at. Food.
Right. So that, and then also just this time of year, I think I love the weather. I love that I get to wear sweaters and sweatshirts and just be cozy all the time. So there's a lot of things around this time of year that I love. But what I don't like is how stressful and how busy this time of year tends to get. It's just, it's rough.
Yes. Yeah, I remember those times where you'd stress out, and then the day of you maybe get to enjoy it. So like
Hmm.
maybe Thanksgiving you get to enjoy it, but you're busy with, buying food and preparing food and things like that, and entertaining
Yes.
if you're having the get together at your house. Same thing with Christmas, you maybe get like an hour or two of hanging out, and then once it's done you're like, oh God, thanks.
Right.
Like, you know, at least for myself.
Yes, no, I am right there with you.
Yeah. So yeah, going back to these stresses of the holidays, and as I had said, holiday blues. It can be coming on for folks. It maybe already has back in November, with Thanksgiving coming up. Um, so for those who may not know, for those listening who may not know what holiday blues is, would you mind letting us know what
Yeah.
that is? What can that look like?
Yeah, definitely. So holiday blues can happen really any time of the year, but I think we see it most during this time of year, obviously, because we have these holidays that are just kind of jammed packed next to each other. So I'm even going to throw in Halloween in this holiday blues.
Okay.
So when we look at the holiday blues right around this time of year, this is holidays just in general tend to be very triggering for people. They're often associated with traditions. When we look at the caregivers, for example, we often will see, we've lost somebody, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally. And so if our traditions are centered around some of these people who we might have lost, who maybe were grieving, mourning, or like I said, just not there mentally, emotionally anymore, that's really rough for people. And then we have these holidays back to back. So we have Thanksgiving, and then we have Christmas, and then we have New Year's, and then I'm going to go even further into Valentine's Day, because sometimes the
Yeah.
person that we are caregiving for is our significant other, right? So
Right.
now we're looking at Valentine's Day, and how is that looking different than maybe previous years, right? So
Right.
when we look at the holiday blues, a lot of times people are going to experience their levels of depression maybe are heightened. Maybe they're experiencing more sadness than usual. Anxiety and worry tends to increase. And our energy levels, we're tired. This is a hard time of year. And then adding caregiving on top of it, and then adding the stress of just life, right? So our energy levels are more, they're going to decrease. And then with that, our irritability, right? So a lot of
Yes.
times people experiencing holiday blues are a little bit more on edge. And then loneliness, that's a huge one. Again, especially if we're experiencing some kind of loss physically, mentally, emotionally, just feeling alone, and having this feeling of longing that things I wish for, I wish I could have. I wish things could go back to how they used to be. That's something that I hear a lot. And then a temporary lack of interest in activities that maybe a person once used to enjoy. So especially around the holidays, maybe a person loved to go to family get-togethers, and now they just have no desire to go. I just don't want to go. I just don't want to be part of. I just don't want to put on this happy face. And yeah, sometimes though we do have to fake it till we make it. But there's just this dread of I just don't want to go.
Yeah.
So the holiday blues, these symptoms definitely do decrease, though. That's one good thing to look forward to. As the holidays kind of wrap up and come to an end, the idea is that the holiday blues will decrease and they go away at the end of the season. That's the good news.
No, that is, it is good. I just kept focusing on the experience of, you have to experience, not have to, you don't have to, but you experience that 3 times in those months. So
Yeah.
like you're saying, you could experience the same things for those 3 months, which already create a little bit of like, and then going into Valentine's Day, I didn't think about that. I didn't think about, maybe there was a type of tradition. We used to go out to dinner. We used to go out to, we used to do something, and I can no longer experience that anymore. That's heartbreaking.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. Within those stresses and irritability, I think you see that a lot, especially with shopping. Going holiday shopping, you can see there's a bit of irritability or stress. With the holiday blues, what you were saying that it goes away. It doesn't have to stay. Those feelings don't have to stay there. Once we'll say Valentine's Day is over, February is over. But what if those symptoms persist, get worse, possibly fall into a depression? What would be the difference in like holiday blues symptoms and symptoms of depression?
Right. That's a really good question. So, because sometimes we do see this, right? So we start out with the holiday blues and then wait, like these feelings are not going away. So what's happening now? And yeah, we definitely would be looking at some symptoms of depression. So when these holiday blues are long lasting and maybe they're lingering past the holidays, now we experience the holiday blues, but now we're in June, July, August, right? Now, we're not really holidays. Granted, in those months, like I said, holiday blues could be at different times of the year, depending different traditions and things you celebrate with your family or friends. So, but if we're looking at these holiday blues, if they're long lasting, they become debilitating to the point where I'm just not doing anything. I'm not getting out of bed. My daily routine is not happening. My daily functioning is being our routines are being thrown off. Maybe I'm not going to work anymore, or my habits are just changing. So now we've changed our way of life. Constant, again, that long lasting. So if they're constant for weeks at a time, this is happening. We're not getting any breaks from it. And then before I mentioned what the holiday blues are, sometimes we lose interest in some activities, but then when we're noticing that we're losing interest in all activities that we once enjoyed, whether it's around the holidays or not, maybe I used to enjoy bike riding and now I just don't want to do it. That has nothing to do with the holidays, but if I'm getting to a point where just my daily average things that I enjoyed doing are just not enjoyable anymore, there's an issue. If our sleep is being impacted, right, we start developing insomnia or hypersomnia. So insomnia is, we can't sleep. And then hypersomnia would be we're sleeping all the time. So if those two things, opposite ends of the spectrum, are happening there. Significant weight gain or weight loss. Now, I have to throw this out there. Holiday blues, the holidays, we're going to possibly experience some weight gain, right? Because we talked about earlier, the food.
Right.
So we have to take that into consideration. But if this is becoming a long-lasting thing, then there's some red flags there. Also, once we start developing feelings of hopelessness or helplessness, this is no longer holiday blues. Now we're looking more at depression. And then hopefully it doesn't get to this point, but sometimes it does. But sometimes suicidal thoughts might start happening. And that is not holiday blues. Suicidal thoughts, helplessness, hopelessness, those are extreme symptoms of depression. And at that point, it's really important to seek help because nobody should have to go through those things alone. And
Yes.
it's important to work through those things with a professional.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It sounds like if these thoughts or feelings or just feelings of sadness, possibly hopelessness, is affecting your daily, day-to-day routine, then that's a sign that it may be time to speak with somebody.
Yeah. And you know what, even just, I don't mean to say that if you're developing these symptoms of depression, that's when you seek a professional. There's nothing wrong with seeking a professional for the holiday blues. I don't want to minimize that. But I think if we start noticing these long-term impacts, these deep wounds, that's really important for us to seek the help.
Definitely. No, I agree with you. Yeah, even just speaking out, your feelings, instead of I guess expressing them or wearing them, you know, expressing how you feel, telling someone how you feel, always helpful.
Yeah.
Especially when someone is feeling high stressed or just completely irritable. I mean, it's an amazing thing to just get that out, because then then it's out, and you
Yeah.
can either look into feeling better or doing something that makes you feel better, or just becoming comfortable with expressing that, like,
Yeah.
hey, I feel irritable today because I miss my wife or husband, or and I'm just, maybe I just won't go shopping today. I just want to hang out, I just want to watch TV or whatever. So those would be I think some things that could benefit a difficult day, like we were talking about, Thanksgiving, Halloween, Christmas, whatever holiday it may be, or even just a day that is important to the caregiver. If a caregiver does run into one of those days where it's just difficult, what would be some type of plans or activities that someone could do to remedy that, to remedy those feelings?
Mm-hmm. I think the number one thing that we have to remember is to stay connected to our normal daily routines as much as possible. I think it's really easy to get away from that during the holidays. And by daily routines, I mean, if you have, say every morning you get up to work out and to journal and to read some kind of inspirational thought, even during the holidays, those need to remain as consistent as possible. So maintaining a consistent routine, as like I said, as much as possible. Sometimes we go out of town, sometimes we have family staying with us, but as much as possible, keeping those daily routines that we have. So that would be one thing. That helps when we have difficult days because there's consistency there. We know what to expect. We have some kind of idea how the day will go. Now, if we know for sure that a birthday, for example, is coming up, we know that that is going to be a difficult day. So we have to have a plan. We have to know what we can do during that day that's going to help us. So, for example, say I have a loved one that has passed away or I care for who is no longer able to do the things that we used to do, I think it's really important to say, okay, this birthday is coming up. I need to make sure I'm reaching out to a friend. I need to make sure I have a lunch date with somebody. I need to make sure I have some place to go, something to do, and really making sure you're planning ahead. And also relying on people who are reliable. I think sometimes we set ourselves up with a plan and we're relying on other people, but then sometimes the people we are trying to rely on are not the most reliable. So that's really not going to help us. So being really particular on who you're scheduling dates with, who you are checking in with, it needs to be purposeful. So I don't know, I kind of went on a tangent on that, but I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it did, and
Okay.
it gave a ton of insight. That was real. Like, you do have to be conscious of who you're planning with. For example, if for me, if I plan something with somebody, and it gets canceled or whatever reason, well, for me, like, now the ball's in your court. Like, if you want to hang out, then let me know. Like, I'm not,
Right.
I'm easy to find. Just send
Yeah.
me a text or whatever. But that's for me, and that's mainly because, for one, like, I'm busy. Everybody has families, kids, pets, anything. Just people get busy. And so if I'm setting aside time for you, or for anyone, if they're setting aside time for you, that's a really special thing. And if you can't make it for whatever reason, it's a text, just hey, sorry, I can't make it this time, let's reschedule, or a phone call, even better, because I love phone calls. Like, hey, can't make it, sorry, reschedule. But it doesn't make the other person feel like, oh, well, why did I even try, because those
Right.
feelings happen. So
Yeah.
I,
I
I
think
just added.
too, yeah, no, I think that that's important. And this idea of, checking in with people who are reliable, or doing lunch dates or something with somebody who's reliable, especially if it's a difficult day, right? It's one thing if it's just a random lunch date that we have, but if I'm trying to plan ahead for a difficult day, I need that person, not just for lunch. Like, I need that person for emotional support. And so I have to be able to rely on that person. And there is nothing wrong with asking that person to do this lunch date, or to be a check-in person, and to remind them of why you're doing this. This birthday or this holiday is coming up, and I am really afraid I'm going to be struggling. I really want to make sure that I have this day packed with things that are going to be uplifting. So I really need you. It's okay to say things like that. People aren't going to read our minds. So if we just say, hey, let's go to lunch this day, and they're like, yeah, sure, fine, let's go. To them, they're not understanding. Sorry. To them, they're not understanding what the big deal is. I think we need our support people to know that they are our support people.
Yeah, it's hard to express those things for a lot of people. But I
That's very
feel,
vulnerable.
yeah. I mean, I don't like feeling vulnerable like
Right.
that. It's uncomfortable. And that's what I was just going to say, is like, it's uncomfortable. But also, it comes with experience. And the more that you say those things, the easier it becomes. Because it just sounds so easy, just tell the person that you need them for support and whatever. But it's like, for myself, to put myself in that position and say, like, I need you, that is so hard for me. Like, it is difficult. And so what type of things could we do to encourage that? I mean, to encourage that type of dialogue with
Yeah.
someone.
I think it's important to start with somebody who you can trust. I wouldn't maybe go to somebody who I feel is constantly judging me. That probably wouldn't be the first person that I would practice this with. I would want to go to somebody who I know has good intentions and who isn't going to judge me or make fun of me, put me down, those types of things. But I think also something that's important is for you to be able to acknowledge within yourself first that there's an issue, to acknowledge how you are feeling about something, that you're feeling a certain way, and that's okay. I need to own that, and I need to recognize it. And once we can get to that point, because that's in and of itself is difficult for a lot of people. But once we can get to the point where this is how I'm feeling, I'm owning it, I'm accepting it, and now I need to reach out. And then reaching out to somebody that you trust. And then as you start practicing that a little bit more, I think we become, it feels more comfortable. I always tell my clients it's important for us to practice being uncomfortable sometimes, because we can't get comfortable in something unless we've gone through the uncomfortable. And so we have to find a healthy balance of feeling uncomfortable to get comfortable, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And it goes back to in the beginning where we were talking about, going and volunteering at this crisis center, or, just if it's scary to you, do it, because the experience that you're going to gain from that decision is invaluable. I think, like, whatever that may be, if you're scared to do it, because then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, it can open up this huge door of opportunities or experiences. I mean, that's amazing. Think of it as something as simple as getting on a plane. People are scared to fly, but all of a sudden you're completely out of your comfort zone. And then you get to this destination that's so different and so beautiful and so, just, I don't know, just insane to visit. And then you come back and you tell everybody, and it's like, man, it's like you just, traveled through time, because they may not have experienced that. Now all of a sudden you influence all these people, and now they want to go experience it. Like, it's an amazing thing, I guess on a lower scale, really, of building, building someone up. So I have automatic thoughts. What are those? What are automatic thoughts?
So a lot of times we have just any random situation. We have a thought about it, right? So sometimes our experiences, they shape our thoughts about things, our past experiences. So if maybe I have a situation and I'm making a triangle with my hands, like everybody listening can see what I'm doing. But if you could imagine a triangle, and that's the situation that you're faced with. So on the top of the triangle is your thought. And then on one side, on the bottom of the triangle, is your feeling. And then the other side is your behavior. So we have a situation, we have this automatic thought that pops up. And typically, we're human beings, so typically that automatic thought is going to be a negative automatic thought. It's very rare for us, I mean, it happens, but it's very rare for us to experience a situation and automatically think something super positive and amazing about it. We like to go to the negative first. And if we look at our brain and how our brain is mapped, it's easier, the area of our brain that holds negative memories is easier to access than the part of our brain that holds positive memories. And so we have to work harder to look at these positive memories and have these positive thoughts. And human nature is to just find the easy way, right? So that means it's going to be a negative thought.
Yeah.
So we have this situation, and again, imagine the triangle. And then if we think about what's our first automatic thought that comes to the situation, because that thought is then going to trigger how we feel about the situation. And then how we feel is how we will end up ultimately behaving towards that situation. What our action is, our choice that we do to work through the situation. So if I were to give you an example, say, if we go with the caregiving theme, say, for example, I am being invited to a family get-together, and I have to, I have the person that I'm caring for, I'm bringing them with me. And the situation is I have to get all of their stuff together, and I have to make sure that we're there on time, and I want to just enjoy myself, but I'm going to be worrying about the person that I'm caregiving for. So situation, going to this party, this family get together. The thought is, oh my gosh, there's so much work. This is really stressful, right? So the feeling that comes with that is almost like a sense of, like I said, there's stress. I'm feeling kind of defeated. I'm feeling maybe frustrated, isolated, lonely. There's all kinds of feelings that could come with that type of thought. And then the behavior is, maybe I go to this party and I do all the things that I need to do, but I'm not going to enjoy myself because I don't really want to be there. It was too stressful in the first place. And I'm resentful that I had to do all these things before the party. Yeah. So that's how that plays out. Now, we have control over our thoughts. That's probably one of the only things we will ever have 100% control over in our life. So if we take that same situation, because we can't control that, it just is what it is. The situation, it is what it is. But what if I make a conscious choice to change my thought about that situation? Rather than allowing myself to go down the path of, these are all the things that I need to do, maybe I'm going to say, you know what, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to think along the lines of, I get to go to this party and I get to see my family and my friends, and there's people going to be at this family get together that I haven't seen in a long time. How amazing will it be for them to be able to see my mom, who maybe I'm taking care of, that I'm bringing to the party with me, or my mom to be able to see all these people, maybe, who knows, for the last time. Now my feelings become a little bit more maybe excited. I want to go. I can't wait. I'm doing more preparations with maybe a little bit more pep in my step. And my behavior at the situation, at the party, is I am enjoying myself being there. I'm having a good time. I'm engaging more. I'm experiencing more, and I'm going to walk away way more fulfilled. So just the idea is, again, this automatic thought stuff and the situation, the triangle situation, is if we can just control our thoughts just a little bit more and tweak them in just a little bit more positive way. If we go through that whole triangle, our behavior is so much better. Our feelings are so much different. And I think we just end up enjoying things just a little bit more.
We have control over our thoughts. And we also have that ability to change the narrative. So we can go ahead and say, like you were saying, I have to get all these things together. I have to do it, and say, oh, I get to go to this party. Mm-hmm. Like language is so important in how we phrase things.
Yes.
Because it can completely change our way of thinking.
Yeah, it triggers different parts of our brain when we just change one word.
Yeah, it's insane. I think of like exercising, like I have to exercise, or I get to exercise. Because that's the thing. I'm sure like people who maybe have don't have the ability to use their legs would love to like run a mile, or right. Those who can't use their arms would love to deadlift 165 pounds or something like that, just to have that experience. And I think, like you said, the easiest thing to do is stay negative. Mm-hmm. There's not stay negative, but choose the negative thought first.
Yeah.
It made me think of this song, and the chorus is, we live in the negatives. And it's true. Like a majority of us, that's the first thing we go to is the negative thought. Like, oh, I have to do this. I have to wash my car. I have to give the dog a bath. I have to, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But you really don't have to do anything. Like,
yeah.
And it's true. Like once you change that mindset of like, oh, I get to give my dog a bath today, it's so cool. Like you get that extra pep in your step. You get that extra like vigor to where you're like, okay, cool. And not just that, like it's triggering, because like you said, it's triggering in your mind, because then it's like, okay, I just watched the dog. Oh, let's go get you a treat, and let's go do, like it suddenly right. becomes this snowball of like positive things and maybe even positive affirmations that you're giving to yourself every day. And I mean, who doesn't love that? I mean, I love positive affirmations. If right. I could get them every day, it'd be amazing.
Right. And so, what's interesting about that is when we start to feel those positive affirmations, whether they're coming from ourselves or for somebody else, we kind of look forward to doing it again. right? So if we start out with this negative stuff, like you were giving the example about giving your dog a bath, if it becomes this huge to do and I don't want to do it and it's something negative, then the next time I have to do it and the next time I have to do it, it just gets worse and worse and worse. But if you can have a positive outlook on it and it turns out to be fun and exciting, and if we can experience it and change our thought and our feeling and our behavior about a situation, then the next time we go to do that, or the next time we're faced with that situation again, now we're going to think, oh yeah, it's not a bad thing, this is a good thing. And now we're just more excited about doing it, or we're more, I don't want to say we're not always excited about it, but maybe we just have a better feeling about it than the negative.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And going back to like a caregiving situation where, I get to bring my mom to this party, or my care receiver to this party, it all of a sudden can open, as we were talking and discussing, it can open up this new feeling of like, wow, people were so excited to see him or her, or see this person, and it was great. And then it's the same thing is, okay, let's do it again, and it may not work out every time,
Right.
but the one of the positives of that is, you're becoming comfortable with
Yes.
taking that person out, or doing whatever the situation is. You're more comfortable in doing that than you were before. There's progress there.
Right. You're
And
becoming comfortable with the uncomfortable.
yes, that's my favorite. Oh, I'd say it all the time. It's my favorite. I love it. And I know we both follow David Goggins, so it's like,
Yes.
I know it comes from there too. For those who haven't, or don't know who that is, I recommend just Googling him. And he's a great person, really motivating.
He throws around a lot of F-bombs, but he's very motivating.
Oh yeah. Trigger warning if you're not
Yes.
into to cursing or things like that. He does. He throws a lot of F-bombs, curses a lot, but it's solid advice, and
Yeah.
it's truth. It's hard truth, as he would say, I think. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, with that, some ways that caregivers can cope with possibly the loss of a care receiver, if that's happened recently. And I know that can be big, if they lose the person and the holidays are here, um, going with what we said about traditions and things like that. What would be some more ways to cope with that,
Yeah.
that you could suggest? I know our listeners would be appreciative of that.
Yeah, I think it's really important, in working with clients. I've had a lot of people tell me, like, their families, we just can't talk about, say, for example, the person maybe passed away. We just can't talk about them. And I think we do such a disservice for ourselves and our family and the person that's passed away, when we keep their name secret, or when we hide that. So talking about the person, saying their name, whether they are with us mentally, physically, or emotionally, or if they've left us mentally, physically, emotionally, to be able to talk about them, say their name, share stories about them. And I think it's important too to keep the traditions as much as possible. I think that's a big trigger for people is, oh, we can't do, our whatever the tradition might have been. We can't do that anymore because the person's passed away, or because they're not with us like they used to be. But let's try to make the traditions as close as we can from the past. Maybe we need to make some changes to accommodate a person's abilities or the fact that they're not with us anymore, but we can still participate in similar traditions. And then with that, starting new traditions. Who says we can't start new ones, right?
Right.
I have a couple stories that maybe if we have time I can share that clients have made. There some new memories, some new traditions with their families when they've lost somebody, and it's pretty. It's very therapeutic for people to start new traditions, I think, just from what I've seen in other people. But like I said, exchanging memories or stories about a person, cooking their favorite meals or their favorite desserts at these holiday get-togethers, honor them that way. And then also going back to what we were kind of talking about earlier, just kind of owning the feeling and being able to talk about them. be honest with how you feel. If you are really struggling, be honest about that. Again, whether that's to yourself or to somebody else, acknowledge that you're struggling. Acknowledge that this family party or this dinner is rough, because that's okay. It's going to be. You can't really expect it not to be. So to just be honest about how you feel and accept those feelings of longing, of grief, of sadness, and then remaining connected with friends and family. I think that that's important as well. We need that connection. I listened to a webinar recently on preconditions to trauma, and Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, he's a top researcher on trauma, and one of the things he says that's a precondition to trauma, so something that like leads up to somebody experiencing trauma, one of those major things is loss of connection. So if we've lost someone in our life, that's a trauma in and of itself. And then we pair that with losing connections with friends and family that are still with us. Now we've just piled on top of each other these traumas and this loss of connection, and that does not help us at all.
Yeah, and hearing you say that, you lose connection with one person, but that's tied to possibly 4 or 5, however many other people that you don't get to see. And that is like, you don't get, it's so great when I do these podcasts, because then I start hearing different perspectives on topics that I'm passionate about or that I'm interested in. You don't think about that as being traumatic. You just think, oh, well, it's, we just don't talk anymore. But I mean, it can affect not just yourself, but the other person too.
Yeah.
You don't really think about that or how they're dealing with it or how you're dealing with it. I mean, for myself, it's like you sweep it under the rug because it's like, okay, well, we're just not talking. Like I got other people there. But I mean, it'd be naive of me to say that doesn't affect you.
Right.
And I wanted to also talk about just starting new traditions, and as you said, that being therapeutic. I think in the beginning, a lot of caregivers or other folks who are listening may be hesitant to change that because I've heard many say when people pass that, oh, it's the way they would have wanted it. That's how they would have wanted it. That's how they would have wanted it. And you want to respect that, but in a sense too, it's changing. And would they be open to this change? Would they enjoy it, or to bring that person along with it, like you said, with sharing memories? I think this person would have liked this, or and it can even turn funny, because I mean, I just find humor that's like, I don't know if it's coping or what, but
yeah.
You make it funny. It's like, oh yeah, he wouldn't have dug this at all, but it's
Right.
funny because like, oh, remember, it just starts getting that flow of positive thoughts, and that you get to celebrate the life of the person you were able to see and hold and love. I think those are great things and great advice. And so also with holidays, it seems like everything changes, like television changes, movies change, all types of different things. Do you have any like favorite holiday movies or memories that you had growing up?
I don't know if I have any holiday movies. I do know the Santa Claus with Tim Allen. That was always a fun one to watch. Me and my brother would watch that a lot when we were younger. I don't remember ever really watching Christmas movies, but I do now. I don't know why. I think it has to do with my husband growing up, but now he makes us watch Charlie Brown's Christmas every year.
Oh, nice. Nice with
like,
the little
why? The little Christmas tree,
Yeah, a little holiday shrub. Yeah.
Yes. So we try to watch that every year. But we don't have too many movie stuff that we watch, but we do. I know, like growing up, and I've tried to keep this alive. It's hard, especially as like my stepson grows up and stuff. But growing up, we used to go look at Christmas lights every year. So Christmas Eve, we would go find those streets that every house is just decorated their house crazy, you know, lots of lights and everything. And we would walk and get hot chocolate and all of that. And that's what we would do Christmas Eve, or like the day before Christmas Eve. So that was a huge tradition that we did. And I, like I said, tried to implement that. Sometimes my stepson's a lot older now, he's 21, but when, you know, my husband and I will still go and walk around and look at lights, and that just is reminiscent of me being a little girl. You know, I love that. And I think my husband can see the little kid come out of me when we do that. So that's always fun.
Yeah, you get that glee, that
Yeah.
holiday glee, you know.
Yeah,
That's
that
one of
we're
those holiday
getting.
words you get to use.
Yes, yeah.
Um,
Something else too that's always been fun. When I was little, my grandparents would always give us pajamas, and so my mom would make us open that on Christmas Eve, and so we would wear our new pajamas to bed. I think a lot of people do this, but we would open our pajamas on Christmas Eve. We would wear them, and then Christmas morning when we woke up, we would be in our new pajamas, our new Christmas pajamas, and that has been something that I've carried on. You know, I remember when my stepson was younger, he would get so excited because we were going to open a Christmas Eve gift, you know, and he would always say, "But it's not going to be pajamas, is it?" And I'm like, "I don't know."
I guess
And
you'll
it
have to
always
see.
was. It was always pajamas. But we still do that. I mean, every year we still open all of us still open our pajamas that we wear. So that's been a ongoing tradition.
That's awesome. I love it. So there was a reason why I was asking. I know that with holiday movies and things like that, it can spark up maybe like an expectation of
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, I need to have my family around, or I need, like you use those words of it needs to happen this way, it needs to do this way. You know, it can set those high expectations of having the perfect Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, whatever that may be. Um, how can someone who has these expectations um, begin to set, you know, just a realistic expectation, so there is no disappointment and they do get to enjoy those holidays? I thought of like, you see, you know, everybody knows Home Alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
The family goes on this really extravagant uh flight or vacation on Christmas to France, I think. And you know, everybody's there and it's chaos and things like that. And I just use that as an example, but in growing up, seeing that, it was like, okay, the house has to be decked out.
Right.
You has to have like 5 trees in your house and things like that. But it doesn't always happen that way. So with that, it can maybe trigger some holiday blues symptoms because it's just not really going the way the person celebrating wants it to. What would be something that can assist them with gaining realistic expectations of like, cool, we're going to have a great time, it's going to be awesome, so and so is coming in and I haven't seen them, you know, things like that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I do definitely think that around the holidays we have this idea of what it's supposed to look like, what it's supposed to feel like, um, how we are supposed to spend these days. And um, I think the most important thing is we have got to be okay with change. We have to embrace it. Um, Even if you just look at the normal way life plays out, um, we don't maybe even need to be experiencing a loss or be grieving or anything like that. Just as we grow up, as our families grow, things change. And I think that that needs to be accepted and that needs to be embraced. It's really hard to do. I'm not saying this like it's, you know, super easy, but
Yeah.
it's a really hard thing to do, but that has to happen. And I think that that's the only thing that I'm going to say right now that is falls in that supposed to or have to when it comes to the holidays. That's something that we're going to end up needing to do. Um, but as far as helping ourselves with dealing with high expectations around the holidays, this kind of falls into that category of the self-care that we don't really enjoy doing, because setting an expectation or a boundary that is a form of self-care. So when we don't overcommit to things, for example, say we are caregiving and this is our first year of caregiving and we're completely overwhelmed, and we normally host Thanksgiving dinner at your house, but your lifestyle has changed now. Don't overcommit. It's okay to say no. It's okay to say, hey, we can still do Thanksgiving dinner. It's just not going to be at my house this year. Or we can have it at my house, but people need to come over and cook instead of me doing it, right? So
Right.
really setting some expectations, some limits for yourself, for others around you, what you are okay with and what you are not okay with. And then being aware of just those supposed tos, those shoulds, those have tos. When you find yourself saying that, kind of what we were talking about earlier, about the language that we use, if you pay attention to when you start saying, well, I have to do this, I have to do that, just take a step back. Do you have to? Do you really have to? What would happen if you didn't?
Right.
Is Christmas no more, right?
Right.
Are we not having Thanksgiving anymore because you didn't do something you had to do? I mean, things are still going to carry on. Maybe you don't have as many decorations as you normally do, or maybe, the gravy tastes a little bit off this year, but that's okay. That is okay. And to be okay with that, that's also that hard thing to do. So,
Yes.
and then when the holidays are over or Thanksgiving dinner is done, in your mind or even out loud, praise yourself, pat yourself on the back. You did it. You got through it. You did what you needed to do, whatever that was, right?
Yes. And I
So
want
I
to
don't know
add,
if that helps. Yeah, please add.
yeah, I want to add, put yourself on a pedestal. That's been
Yes.
my favorite saying. I had someone tell me that one time, and that goes through my head a lot of the time when, something happens that was really cool. It's like, put yourself on a pedestal, like
Yeah,
for a little bit, and just enjoy it. Enjoy the fact
right.
that you accomplished that, you're doing great, and then it's on to the next thing.
Yeah, I think something, I like what you just said, but that kind of triggered a thought in me. Um, Around the holidays, when we are decorating or when we are gift giving or when we are making meals or whatever, people compliment us, right? Oh, thank you for this, or that was so good, or this looks beautiful, or people compliment us on things. And to accept those compliments, that's a way that we can self-care. That's a way that we can praise ourselves. That's a way that we can provide acceptance and practice acceptance. Because how often, especially when we're stressed, does somebody compliment us that we come back with a negative response, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
it was nothing, or oh my gosh, I was so stressed and I did that, or I didn't know if you were gonna like it, or oh, but look at this little thing that went wrong. We just find all of the negatives. Just say thank you.
Yeah, even that, or just being dismissive, like, oh, thanks. And you like,
Right.
you're like going, you didn't even hear what they said. Like, you're just like, oh, thanks.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
So cool. Well, any further advice for caregivers who may be facing holiday blues, or are anxious about facing the holiday blues, or maybe in it right now, that choose to listen to this podcast?
I think the problem, one thing to keep in mind is pay attention to yourself. I think as caregivers, our mentality is other people, another person. But take a minute and reflect on what's going on with you and how you are feeling, the thoughts that are going through your mind. Remember, they're automatic. And so maybe we don't always pay much attention to them, but really sit with them and think, what's going on? Have that conversation with yourself. Because when we do that, we are able to identify where there's a problem that maybe we need to address, or where we need to give ourselves a little bit more attention. So that would probably be my biggest thing is just reflect. Spend some time daily. This should be a daily practice that you do. Just spend some time reflecting on what's going on in you.
Perfect. Check in with yourself is what it
Yes.
sounds like. Check in with
Mhm.
yourself. Make sure you're doing okay. Ensure that you're okay, because of course, like, if you're not okay, how can you care for someone else? um,
Exactly.
and so I hope everyone listening has a great holiday, And I just want to say thank you so much for your insight. Thank you so much for your perspectives on the holiday blues. It's definitely appreciated. And just thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been really fun. I've had a great conversation with you, and I am honored to be part of this. And for those listening, and for you too, Derek, happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year, and all the things in between.
Awesome. Awesome. I hope you enjoyed episode 9 of the Inland Caregivers Corner podcast. I would love some feedback on the show. Please drop a comment on the page if you are or are not enjoying the podcast. Subscribe to Inland Caregiver Resource Center page. Inland Caregiver Resource Center's page on YouTube, and listen to our previous episodes along with all upcoming episodes. I hope you will join me again in January of 2022, where we'll discuss New Year's and New Year's resolutions. We will have some great information on these topics, so stay tuned for that episode in January. If yourself, a neighbor, friend, relative, or colleague need resources with caregiving, please contact Inland Caregiver Resource Center at 800-675-6694. Add us on Facebook at facebook.com/ICRC1985. Follow us on Instagram at Inland Caregiver, and like and subscribe to Inland Caregiver Resource Center on YouTube. Of course, check out our beautiful new website at www.inlandcaregivers.org. Keep listening to Inland Caregivers Corner for information and resources as we continue to cope with and manage the challenges of caregiving and aging together. I'm Derek Chacon, and continue to care for yourself, loved ones, and your community. Take care.